Good day, y'all. Pardon the y'all, I'm from Texas. It's days, it goes with me everywhere, even overseas. I appreciate you being in here. I know I have other, there are other excellent speakers in the building, and so you being in here to talk about mud is remarkable. And I hope that I can answer your questions. In fact, because it's an intimate group, I can answer your questions. And so that's the fantastic part about this. My name is Chelsea Barlow. I live in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, and I'm a homeschool mom and wife. We own several businesses. We have a swimming pool business. I have several online businesses, and then I'm also what's called a prayer coach, a trained and selected prayer coach. So I was trained by Bride Ministries, and I work with people with dissociative identity disorder, satanic ritual abuse survivors, and mind control. And the goal is to pray over them, and then they reintegrate and live a healthy, thriving life. And that has been the most interesting work I've ever done in my life. It's fantastic. So those are the other things I do. But what I have been doing essentially since I got married was focusing on natural health in order to be prepared for when our healthcare changes. And here we are. It's kind of scary times right now. So in the year 2000, I committed to becoming a naturopathic doctor. And it wasn't until healthcare was absolutely starting to change in 2012 that I decided, and I started on my 40th birthday, I decided to go back to school. And I started my school education through Trinity, School of Natural Health. And I became a naturopathic doctor down the road. I also became a bioenergetic practitioner. I went through a college that no longer goes by that name, and I don't endorse the new version, so it's irrelevant, but it was an excellent school at the time. And so I use bioenergetic devices to work with people. However, I have learned that mud is a fantastic bioenergetic device. So a little backstory, probably a decade ago, I heard a sermon. And the sermon, I didn't connect the dots until 2 years ago. But the sermon, the preacher was talking about a man who had this massive job to fix an electrical problem, an electrical grid problem. I was barely listening, but I caught the important parts to this that spoke to me for decades. But he talked about how this man knew the Bible. And he remembered how Jesus turned water into wine, but those weren't wineskins. They were ceremonial cleansing pots. And he considered himself an alchemist. So he realized that the conversion required, the amount of electricity or energy required to convert water into wine was massive, and those pots didn't burst. So he actually started using ceramics in the electrical grid problem, and it fixed the problem, and we're still using porcelain or ceramic in our grids, in our transformers today. And I think 2 years ago I found out who that guy was. His name was Chester Thorderson, and he worked with Thomas Edison, and I actually got to visit his house. So it was really neat to understand that. But if you understand the electrical component of turning water into wine and sitting in ceremonial cleansing pots that they would use, they had pure water in, and understand that mud held it together. Okay, then we apply it to what happens within the body when we put mud on it. Okay, so I use mud in a technique called mud packing to strategically place mud on a person's body so that when their body has had an injury, whether it be from surgery, I had 5 C-sections, an appendectomy, and a dehisced wound, so this line was cut a lot. And so that is a massive interference field that I used to have. I have a scar, but I don't have an interference field anymore. So when there's an interference field, especially in the conception vessel, this meridian of the body, it's significant to the whole body. Okay, So when we're talking about this conception vessel being a big hiccup, I call it a hitch in your get along. Back from Texas, although I live in the Metroplex. I mean, we're not very country, but that is just an expression that I really like to use. There's a hitch in the get along of the energetic pathways in the body. So applying mud appropriately in a certain way, it's not just putting mud on that site. There's actually other places that you put it. And let's go back to the ceremonial cleansing pot concept. I put mud in at least 2 places on the body, important places. On the interference field, where the boo-boo is, the energetic boo-boo is, and then another place where it can help compress and contain the energy so that it can focus and pop out the dents. Does that make sense? Okay, so if you think about, if you've been in a car accident, you know there's dents all over the car, where our body energetic field can actually look that way if you could see it. I mean, not like 4 wheels and a steering wheel, but we can have dents on our body. The more injuries we have. Concussions are really important, and dental work is really important to fixing within our body, because if we have head points off, we are going to have to be on heavy amounts of supplements just to stay afloat. The head is very critical to the well-being of our entire body. I think everything except the kidney meridian goes through this area. So they're very, very important to get through, because then you're going to need those supplements forever. So when we have a practitioner that's working with somebody and they need a ton of supplements, I'm going to recommend first, not only give them the supplements they need, but sign them up for mud packing, because they're always going to have this enormous budget, and they may never get well. They may just need those to stay afloat. Okay, so the head is critical, the body is critical, everything's critical, but everything's invisible. So MudWise is a course online that teaches you how to test for interference fields, how to map your body, how to map the emotions that might be tied to that, because we also talk about supporting the emotional component of the event. Also looking at the meridians of the body, so there's homework in it. So I had one of my students who is a practitioner, took the class and she body mapped, and I have it's hard to see from there, you're welcome to come up, look, this is my body, and some of the points that I had to mud pack on my body, and I can show you a kind of a way that we did this. I never got to the meridians because I've been peopling this weekend, but we can certainly talk about that. Pardon me. But we body map in the class, we look at the emotional component, and we look at where the meridians were. So let me go back, pardon me, I dropped that. The student practitioner, she body mapped and she said, I have 4 hits, is how she described it. I have 4 hits on my gallbladder meridian. And I said, well, how's your gallbladder? She said, I constantly have to support it. This made sense to her, why her gallbladder couldn't recover. Made sense to her, perfect sense. So having her gallbladder, I use ministered to, but nourished through energy being flooded back through it in appropriate amounts, like this amazing wave of energy that it's been lacking for a long time, her gallbladder was able to recover. When I first learned mud packing, something had occurred in my family a year before. My daughter, oh goodness, she was probably 8 years old at the time. She was the one that brought in the brochures I have for y'all if you want. She got hit in the head with a chunk of watermelon at day camp. And she went kind of hysterical at camp. My friend was the camp nurse, and she said, Chelsea, it was unreal how she was behaving. It's very out of character for her. She's pretty even-tempered, sweet girl. But she looked like she had fireballs coming out of her eyes. And it got to the point where I remember saying to her at bedtime, just go to bed, because I've heard it all and I can't do anything about whatever I can't see. I didn't know how to see what she was seeing, because she didn't have the language for it, but she was really mad that piece of watermelon hit her in the head. The next morning, we woke up and she had pulled out every eyebrow and lash hair, every one, and she continued to do so for a year. That's a diagnosis of trichotillomania. And it started in the night that she had the watermelon hit her in the head. I'm thinking my daughter's crazy. What's going on with her? Then a year later, I learned how to mud pack. And the best advice I ever got as a practitioner was do this on Monday. In other words, don't wait to start mud packing people. Start it right away. And, oh, that's good advice. Any modality you learn, put it into practice just to see if you really love it or not. Well, I did, because I took her, because her love language is quality time with mom, and we had a spa day in my office, and she was really all girly girl about it. And I've got other girls that are not girly girl, but she is my girly girl. She's the one that's making jewelry at our booth. So you can go look at her brows and lashes. But I mud packed her the next day, and 3 months later, we're at my parents' house, and my dad said, Mariah, when did you stop pulling your brows and lashes? And she went, I don't know. It didn't occur to her to pull them. A few months later, I gave myself a concussion. I pulled my van door, the hatch, down on my head, and I had a temperament flip. The whole world around me was real fast, and I was like Cecil the turtle, moving real slow. I knew I had a concussion. Bruiseless. Nobody could see anything. Just like my daughter, bruiseless. But boy, did it change my perspective. It altered things. And I didn't even hit it that hard. It just hit a sweet spot. So my daughter had an experience, but this experience gave me the language for what was going on with her. So I went to my office the next day and mud packed, because I already knew how to do that. So I'm sitting there with the mud packs on, and I'm feeling it, and about 5 minutes in, it gets really warm. And then what I was experiencing was it felt crushed through here. It felt like everything was pushed in, even though visibly it was normal. But I felt it crushed and stuck. And 5 minutes in, it got real warm, and then went poop. And I felt air, and I felt movement. It felt like it was back in place, even though visibly nothing changed. And I finally realized she had been trying to pull that stuck out by pulling on the brows and lashes every chance she got, because it was really bothering her. And once we released it, it didn't bother her anymore. So that was one example of what mud packing can do for somebody, but that was a really good visual to me, my experience, to be able to understand what she was experiencing. So I'm thanking God for that concussion. And it was short-lived, well, just a day. Now, I'm not saying that mud packing will cure concussions. I am saying that mud packing can improve and repair entirely the bioenergetic field that occurred simultaneously with the concussion. Because what goes on in the tissue isn't something that mud packing is necessarily going to be the curative to. However, if we fix the biofield, the body can repair better. My dad had open heart surgery. As soon as the skin closed and was healed, he had a defect they wanted to fix. As soon as it healed and closed, we mud packed him. Man, that mud pack took like that. It was really strong, really well. So we never saw a before and after because this was post-surgery. But I did that because I wanted his heart and the skin and the bones that they cut through to have the best impact of healing, the best approach to healing by having the biofield injury already taken care of. So I just spoke with a man who had been in a horrific car accident. He's head to toe covered in interference fields. His biofield is as messed up as that car was. And so he would be someone that I would need to spend a lot of time. It would be better if he learned how to do it. Financially, it would be much more savvy for him to learn how to do it than to have me do it all the time. So the online course teaches how to do it. It's called MudWise. I bring my clinical experience into it, and I bring in things that I wasn't trained when I learned how to do it in the first time. So I learned from Premier Research Labs down in Austin, Texas. Any of you heard of Premier Research Labs? You have? Yeah, okay. I use their mud. It's fancy mud. It's fancy mud. I don't use their stuff in other parts of my practice because I do more homeopathy and tinctures in a different way. than that, but their remediation products are the bomb. So I use their mud, and they taught me their way. And I started using it, and I started finding other things that were really helpful. And also, I wanted to keep it to a level that was just standardized so that moms could learn it, dads could learn it, and if all you had was mud, all you had was dirt, you could help somebody. Because Jesus even used dirt and spit in it and created mud packs, didn't he? Yeah. So he healed the blind man with dirt and spit. I don't know if you know the verse or not, but I don't want to assume too much. But most of you hadn't heard of mud packing, or at least that was based on a poll. Did any of you answer that poll question? I was just wondering. You did? Okay. All right. I asked the poll in that Hoover app if anybody had heard of mud packing, and nobody had. And I thought that was really interesting. It's an old modality, but it's been long lost and forgotten, and I think it's time to bring it back. So I've been a prepper since the late 90s, since I got married also. So prepping and holistic preparedness was my goal. And one of the things that I think about when I prepare is, what if I only have what's around me? How can I help somebody? You know, it's like MacGyvering through life. Who understands the MacGyver reference? Okay. I'm not sure if she's old enough or not. I can't see very well. I dated myself today. But that's how I feel about it, is can I MacGyver a remedy, a solution through just what is out here in nature, or what I have in my home. So mud was so accessible. It's very easy to use. I've even used Michigan beach sand and done mud packs. And wow, they were great. The lake water, Lake Michigan water. No, this was Lake Huron, actually. Anyway, lake water, sand from the beach, and mud packed myself. And no, it's not ideal because sand doesn't stay together and all that, but yet I had this amazing rush of energy through doing that. So you can use other mud. However, I say while we are in the season where we can access great products, have the best of the best outcomes, let's use the fancy mud. Okay. So I've used a few terms: biofield, interference field. There's another term I'm going to use called downloads. If I could give you a glossary, who needs to know what those mean? Okay. The biofield is the energetic field of the body. We have tissue, but it requires the energetic field to move things. Every organ and system requires energy. An interference field is the boo-boo. It's the injury where something might have happened on your body or in your body. Laparoscopic surgery, you bet there's an interference field. Okay, even if there's a tiny, tiny, tiny scar through your belly button, your body has an interference field. Scar tissue is an interference field, and it's even a visible one, because you can see, and the cells are all different, and sometimes that's an energetic wall that it has to find a way around, or it just doesn't get there. If you think about the meridians in your body, and if they have hits on them, you can also consider it to be like a kinked garden hose, where it's all folded up here and you've got too much flow here and not enough here. So mud packing is a way of straightening out the kinks and allowing the energy to flow through again. The downloads, that's a little bit of a confusing term, and that's okay. The downloads are our hands and feet. They're one of our body's biggest energy pathways of giving and receiving information, hands-on ministry, massage, craniosacral, that's all hands-on energy work. Our feet do a lot. We receive from the earth, we give, we have a lot of transfer. We can get congested. Holding cell phones, living in a Wi-Fi world, flying on an airplane, all these things, even lotions can sometimes congest them. They're okay to go in and out, but when we're doing an adjustment to the biofield, we want them open. So I teach you how to open those first, and then we make the adjustment to the interference field. There's up to 8 of those a day, and some people don't need more than 8. Sometimes that's way more than they need, and some people need hundreds. Yeah, the man I spoke to today would probably need hundreds, unless his body decides to release them all, and I've seen that happen. I had a student drive from oh my goodness, somewhere really, really far. She drove all the way down to Texas, way further than I drove to get here. And she and her husband came together, and she had been domestically abused, and she had interference fields all over her body. All over. And we used Bach flower essences with her mud packs, and she only needed 2, and her whole body popped out, and she had no more interference fields. Her body just said, thank you, I'm finally getting heard, and released all of those interference fields. I mean, she said, we were asking her how she felt, and she's usually real straight-faced, and that's just one of the beauties about her, but she's just got this very steadfast look about it. She goes, I feel floofy. So she was having a euphoric experience, having that all adjusted, but she didn't have to do anything else the rest of the weekend. She had come for just 2 mud packs, and it was so worth it to her. What I did with MudWise was I made it available for practitioners. You can go make money. I teach how to make money with it afterwards, or somewhat. I tell how much I charge. And then for moms, dads, those people that want this in their tool belt for when times get rough, when we don't have access to conventional health care, we need to, for an emergency, let's say somebody had a concussion, you definitely want to do the mud packs. As long as you're not putting it on open skin, those mud packs would be huge for them in recovery. Ask me, I know. Let's see. So the downloads are done first. That's opening up the hands and feet, the energy pathways. And then you do all the interference fields that you can for a day, and you rest. And you do it where you are actually giving yourself TLC. You want your body in rest and relax, parasympathetic mode as much as possible. Those people that can never get out of sympathetic mode, fight or flight, when they're always afraid, or they're either running from the bear, fighting the bear, or being hit by the bear. You know, that they're always in that fight or flight. This might even be what they need to get out of that, is to move out of the sympathetic into parasympathetic. Okay, so the course starts on October 18th. You don't have to show up on the 18th at a certain time. You can come on that Thursday, that's a Monday. You could come on Thursday and watch the videos if you need to. You could even watch them later. The benefit of starting with the class and working in sync with the class is because the questions come in real time. Every week on Wednesday night, we have a live Q&A from 7 to 8 Central. That means that if you, and the beauty, and that's on Zoom, and the beauty of that is that if you can't get there, you can add your questions in before, and then I can answer them in the group, so you can watch the replay. Every class has their own group, so if you're in this class with me, it will just be those that registered for this class, not the past classes. So your questions are going to be unique to your own experience in the class. And then I invite you, once this is over, to join an alumni. I have a MudWise alumni group, so that when you're going on and you're working with clients, you can still ask more questions, and it might be with other MudWise practitioners, and it might be very helpful, even if I can't get to your answer right away, which I'm actually pretty good about that. But if I can't get to your answer right away, someone else might, or they might contribute something that's fantastic. I'm also not a mud legalist. I think there's a lot of ways to do mud. This is a standardized way to get you started. And it's one that MudWise will teach and always teach, but I love variations on a theme, because I think that God is creative, our creator, and that there are many ways to do approaching our health. I have had a client, no, she was a student. Oh, she's a client too. Okay. She came to learn how to mud pack. She had had a horrible leg break and a skin burn from the cast, and it was all healed, except there was scarring, obviously. And she came to class assuming it was going to be a major interference field, and it was not a major interference field whatsoever. So then she goes back and recalls that several months ago, she had done a bentonite clay mask on her face, and she had some left over, and because the skin was burned, she wanted to make that skin prettier on the back of her leg. So she put bentonite clay on the back of her leg and sat there with her face mask. She had done her own mud pack. She didn't even realize it, and it cleared the interference field, and it was still clear. That brings up a point. Usually you do not have to repeat mud packs. Like most people, if you do it once, it's done. So you don't have to have a lifestyle of mud packing yourself. You can go on and help others. So that's a nice comforting thought. Things that are talked about in class. There's an introduction video. There's 2 videos a week. An introduction video, a whole body approach to living well. So how to avoid needing mud packs in the future. That's great. We talk about products you're going to need, the Muddy Mess Kit. So I do a demo on the mess kit. We talk about special considerations, and this one's interesting. This was something they did not teach me at Premier Research Labs. This is definitely my own clinical experience, but I've had clients that had concussions and I didn't know where they came from. They didn't have a clue. And one of them, when we had the mud put on her, had total recall. Thankfully, it wasn't a real traumatic experience, but she had total recall, and so that's possible. For those that don't remember where they came from, she was actually in surgery to have her gallbladder removed, and one of the lamps fell on her head in the OR. So even though we're asleep during an operation, we actually are aware. It's a real complex thing under anesthesia, but she saw the headlight fall on her head, or she remembered it. I had another student that messaged me and said she was having a hard time with the mud packing because she is a satanic ritual abuse survivor. And there's a lot of interference fields with that kind of, those injuries. And some of them are in personal places that are very, that definitely can be interference fields and need mud packing. And she had some other issues, and they really do have trouble because there can be memory released. There can be just insecurities about a lot of things. And so working with a practitioner while she's mud packing might be working with a trained practitioner who works with satanic ritual abuse survivors would be someone you would want to refer her to. So there's those kind of things that we will discuss in there. I also have a video with a good friend of mine, Robin Perry Braun, who taught my partner, Sandy, who's at the booth with me. She taught us the integrated life process, and it's really cool. And I mentioned at one point that it was like a motion code on steroids, and somebody kind of, and then they took her class and they finally understood what it meant. So she's been an inner healing and deliverance minister for 30 plus years, and she incorporated that kind of thing into it, which led me into the whole research into satanic ritual abuse. And I had to know more because people were coming to me. So then I got more training, and I love being able to work with that community. But she's interviewed on this in the course, and so she's in there. In fact, she might even join our class this time. She's wanting to. She has a lot of people that she does need mud packing in her own clientele. So she's going to be in the videos. We do downloads. We do interference fields. I show videos and instructions on that. There's a manual that'll be available. You'll have a Muddy Buddy community that is available to you. I teach how to muscle test. How many of you know how to muscle test? Okay, not you. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm pointing at you and saying not you. Is that okay? Please forgive me. That was really rude. Do you know how to muscle test? No? Okay. You do? Okay. All right, so I teach how to muscle test, and I teach how to muscle test for interference fields. That'll be handy to know. So when you do a mud pack, you know that area is weak, and when the mud pack is done, you'll know it's fixed it because it'll be really strong. So I'd like to do a demonstration on anybody who would like to see if a particular area is an interference field. Is there anybody I'd like to show you? Okay, I want you to keep recording. I know you have interference fields. Anna Marie is a really good friend and a business partner of mine, so.
Yeah, I've taken her classes. Maybe.
And she took one of the early classes. It's gotten better. Okay, what's your name?
Diana.
Diana, I'm Chelsea. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, what area of your body would you say has potentially an interference field?
I would say the back of my head.
Okay.
Right here.
Okay. All right, and what area of your body would you assume does not have an interference field?
It's not.
Mm-hmm.
Area of my body.
How's this shoulder? Is that all right?
Let's see, I slept on. Okay, let's say this.
Okay, we'll see. We'll see. Okay, may I hold your hand?
Right.
This one? Okay. So I use the bidigital O-ring method usually for the mud packing. You can do other ways, but this is my favorite. One time I worked with a quadriplegic woman and we had to use a pendulum. So I even show how to use that in the course. Okay, so you're gonna hold these as tight as you can and I'm gonna pull them apart 3 times. Okay. 1, 2, 3. That's your baseline and that's how hard I'm gonna pull.
Okay.
Take your pinky and put it on your shoulder. Okay, strong as you can, nice and strong. Okay, go around the back to the part of your head that you think is an interference field with your pinky.
Okay. Let's see. It's right here.
Okay. It just opened right up. Okay, so are you taking a lot of supplements to kind of stay afloat?
I am.
Yeah, so it's a head point that definitely is impacting her need to continually support her body. And so if we can get this cleared and maybe some other ones on your body, you won't need so many supplements. Your body will actually be able to use the vitamins in the smaller doses.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay, so it's really as easy as that, is finding where it's not a problem and finding where it is a problem. And then we use the body mapping. I know it's hard to see, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We use body mapping as a homework assignment before we learn how to find those injuries. And it's literally mapping out all of your injuries throughout your body. And some people, oh my goodness, it looks like a crime scene. They use red ink and it's all over the place and whoa. So then we prioritize and there's 8. So we can kind of decide, okay, these are gonna be the high priorities for day 1, if you can do 8. Okay, sometimes you can't. When I did this, I got real dizzy, and that meant take it off, your body's had too much, and rest for the rest of the day and come back. Never push through. I'm gonna say that 3 times. Never push through. Never push through dizziness because your body is talking to you. Don't demand more than it's ready because it's there to serve and it needs timeout. Okay, so next time I came back to this, I had 0 problems, none at all. And that was a significant interference field. And it went all the way through, to the middle of my body. Okay, so we map out the injuries that we've had, the known ones. Some people don't know, right? And then we map out, if we can remember, the emotions that we felt. So I have on my right leg some scrapes. What had happened was I was on my way to work and I was walking down a very steep asphalt driveway and I slipped and slid down on my shin down the thing. So yes, that's an interference field down the shin of my leg. The emotion that went with that was loss and letting go. Sorrow and letting go is what I wrote down. I had just broken up with a boyfriend I really believed I was going to marry. And that's what I was thinking about when I slid down the driveway. I'm glad I did not marry him. But I had just broken up with him. And so that is the emotion that was associated with going downhill fast. And so when I mud packed that, I added in the Bach flowers. It can be funny. I added in Bach flowers into my mud and then did that. And the cool thing is we're adding a 3-hour Bach flower course into this course as a bonus for joining. It's usually $97 and it's free. We're just going to give it to you also. And it's highly appropriate to go with mud packing. So you'll have the Mudwise course, learn how to mud pack, and then the Muddy Bachers course will be available also. Oh, and if you join during convention today, you get $30 off. It's usually $297 and it's now $267. For today's the end of that. And I've got bags. I've got great bags. In the brochure, you'll see somebody in the middle and she's holding one of the bags. And it was highly beloved bags from my last get together. Mudwise also does events. sometime this summer, I can't remember what month it was. We met near Austin in a cabin. We called it a cozy cabin weekend. And our muddy buddies who wanted to just come and have community and mud pack, they came and we mud packed, and we had one of my friends, one of the students of Mudwise wanted to be a certified Mudwise coach. And so she finished her certification by teaching those who needed to learn mud packing. Though some of them had never heard of mud packing, and they came and they wanted to mud pack. So she was there to teach them. And so she finished that. So the difference between taking the Mudwise course and making money mud packing clients and being a certified Mudwise coach is a certified Mudwise coach can teach Mudwise. They will, it's like almost like a franchise type thing where they are able, it's not quite set up like that, but the concept is they can go and teach live classes. If they have online classes, they go through my online course, and they make a commission, but they can teach live and make 100%. As long as they stay within the Mudwise teaching. But they can also add their own special things to it because, like I said, I love creativity, and the synergy of bringing different modalities together can be quite impactful, just like mud packing and Bach flowers. Do any of you know Judy Masters from Trinity? Okay. Okay. She teaches the Bach flower course through Trinity, and they have a mastery level certification through Trinity. I've taken her Mudwise, or her Bach flower classes. I've taken them since 2013. I've been totally in love with the use of Bach flowers and how they impacted us as a family and with my clients. But when we started compounding them with mud, it just kind of blew my mind. Now, she and I taught a class together in my office called Bach to Pack. So she taught Bach, and then I taught mud packing. And there were a group of practitioners. That's where I met my business partner, Sandy Harvey. And she's done all the branding for Mudwise, by the way. So if you're looking for a branding consultant, oh my goodness, she would be amazing. So the class we kept nicknaming ourselves the Muddy Bachers. So that is the name of your course that you have as a bonus with this, is Muddy Bachers, and that's the history behind it. So Judy Masters had a lot to do with that, and we talk about her being our Bach hero in the course. Does anybody else want me to test them for an interference field? You have a bunch. Okay. All right. Do you have any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
So you talked about different modalities and using them together, but it sounds like you're like I am, like you've been trained in many different things.
Mm-hmm.
And I have tried a lot of different things with my clients, but how do you prioritize mud packing over other things? Like you have somebody in front of you and you've got all these different modalities you can reach for. When would you prioritize the mud packing?
On their intake form, I actually make them do a body map, and then we talk about it. And if they've got a bunch in some significant areas, or I'll look at approximately where the meridians are, we'll talk about it, and I'll say that this needs to be done. Oh, goodness, I had this one little girl. She's very petite and thin, but she was probably 12, and her brothers had bonked her on the head with a bat, and it left a dent in her head. So this was a client, and I had been working with them. Our whole family has Lyme, so I was working with them to help them walk that out of their body. But she came in, she had been having migraines for a few months, and it wasn't something her mom even knew about. She was kind of keeping it quiet because the brothers weren't being mean to her. It was just an accident. But she had a dent in her head. So I mud packed her, and by dinner that night, her mom said that the bump had raised 2/3. It moves bones. It moves bones. I mud packed a horse when he was 3 days old. Yeah, Anna Marie knows the horse. LJ is his name. And when he was 3 days old, his herd rammed him into a fence post, and his face is deformed. It was a deep dent, and his eyeball looked a little funny. And you could look normal, but when the sun hit it right, you realized, oh, that's not normal. Something's off. So I mud packed him, and horses, you don't have to do the downloads. because they're already grounded. Their downloads are open. It was fun. So all I had to do was one mud pack on him. Thank you. So I put mud on one of his hooves because you're going to have two places, and it was a hoof that muscle tested. That was the one that needed. And then I put it on the site, and that one was hard to keep on. You kind of have to figure it out as you go. But it just took 10 minutes. He didn't even take long. And then we were busy the rest of the week, and I didn't get to go back and check on him. I did get to go visit him 4 months later, and it was shallow and soft. There were no ridges in that groove in his head. So his bone, he's 30. That bone was there for 30 years and just 10 minutes with mud on it, and it moved and it came up forward. The owner says, yeah, it's really different. It's not your imagination. So mud can move bones. If that can tell you the visible significance of the energy and what it's able to do. On my Facebook Mudwise page, I have one video where I interview my husband. I'm talking about another course launch, but I interviewed him. I should take that and crop that just part out because it's so good. In 2008, he had a flesh-eating bacteria in the leg. So he ended up, losing a lot of skin. He's alive, praise God. But he had a lot of staples that were embedded in the skin grafts, and one of them was right on the ankle bone. And we couldn't get it out, and it was constantly causing infections. He was on antibiotics constantly because it was going to kill him if he had this growth happen. So it was a real problem. So one day he was having another flare up with the infection, and I just took him to my office and just did the downloads, hands and feet. It didn't even put any mud because it was an open wound. I'm not going to do that. We ran home, and I had taken a before and after, and then he got in a tub with Epsom salt to help it. And he stuck his foot out of the tub, and I saw the staple sticking out. We had been trying to get rid of the staple for years, and it was sticking out. His body was able to push that staple out to where it came out, and the doctor couldn't even find it. He said he was going to have to do surgery to find it, and his body pushed it out. And we were able to go to the doctor the next day, and it actually had come back in a little bit, but because we knew exactly what it was, I shined a light, and the doctor was able to there it was. It was a 2-minute process at that point. This thing, he hasn't had an infection since then. The staple was so dumb. Who would put a staple on an ankle bone? I don't know, but his body was able to do that just from getting the downloads open and moving and flowing. So if you know somebody who's been sick, definitely dealing with this international global illness that's going around, if you can get them downloads open, their body's going to have more energy to fight this. Okay. My husband had a stroke. I know he sounds like he's really sick, but he's actually a very healthy guy in a lot of ways. But he had a stroke last summer. And I went to the hospital, put mud on him. They had no problem with that because I wasn't giving him anything orally. And I put mud on him, and he gained new words while the mud was on him. For days, he only had 2 or 3 words, and then suddenly he had some more words. And he absolutely loved the mud packing. So there's all kinds of uses for mud. I highly recommend coming to talk to me if you've got really individual questions or things that I can discuss with you. Yeah.
For it?
I wouldn't do it on open wounds. Yeah, I mean, the whole rub some dirt on it, I'd really rather it be closed. But to be honest, I'm not even sure that's a bad idea, but I'm not going to endorse it. Does that make sense? Bentonite clay on a wound might be quite great. This is bentonite clay with a whole bunch of incredible herbs and nutrients in it. The higher the nutrient value of the mud, the better conductivity is going to occur. I mean, dead mud is probably not going to be as effective. However, if Chester Thordarson can correct the entire electrical grid system with ceramic tile that I would consider dead, I'm thinking just about any kind of mud would work. So, yeah. I haven't found anybody that can't handle mud or any condition. I just like the skin to be closed. But you do want to be sensitive to the person. If they're getting dizzy or something like that, remove the mud and let them rest. It's actually the right thing, and it's very good for them to do that. Any other questions?
You mentioned like the head, the dental work, you're referring to those special fillings.
Lots of things, thank you. Lots of things. So you can have oral surgery, cavities. When that dentist needs to get between your teeth and yank them apart and drill right there.
A big draw, and I'll just get it.
Okay.
Head to toe.
Okay, that's a really good point. So mud baths are different. That's not focusing. It's not that fine tuning to this particular thing. Some people might actually release interference fields through a mud bath. However, this technique is definitely going to be hyper-focused in that one area, and then you want to do the next area. And you always want the downloads open before you start because it enables your body to hold that adjustment much better. Yeah.
So what is the mud bath doing?
Mud bath is a detox. Mud bath is a detox. Mud packing is focusing energy. I recommend both, but they do different things. Mm-hmm. Yes.
How about ingesting?
Okay. When I teach mud packing, there is actually some stuff you ingest to create a mud pack in your tummy. So you actually have 3 points at least on your body, in the stomach, on the interference field, and another place. A reflex point is the name of that other point. So yeah, there's an oral type of it. When I mud packed that horse, he just wanted to eat the mud. He loved it. It was candy, and he was delighted. So yeah, that's very good. Okay, well, Gil, yeah.
One question. When you use the mud to pack, is that now not usable to do that ever again? Or?
Really good question. Don't use it on you, put it in your garden.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, because it has pulled a lot of yuck off of you. Energy, it's an energetic, so you need the earth to help. And it's just going to benefit the earth at that point. Yeah.
What booth are you at?
305 and 7. 305, 307. I'm in that center aisle. Yeah. Yeah, and you can come to the booth and we can talk about body mapping. If you want to map out and say, okay, let's get an idea of what I'm doing, come on over. I've got 9 of these more printed, and I brought a printer so I can print more. Thank you for coming. I know that there was a lot of competition for your attention, so I'm really honored that you were here. I appreciate it. Go to my booth. Yes. Thank you.